Well, former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Freedman, has written a compelling book examining the indelible impact of the October 7th Hamas massacre on Israel. In one Jewish state, Ambassador Freedman makes a case for Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria as the best outcome for Jews, Christians, and Palestinians alike.
During the Trump administration, Ambassador David Freedman helped achieve two historic milestones: relocating the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and forging the Abraham Accords, a groundbreaking move toward peace and coexistence in the Middle East. After his diplomatic service, he began the Freedman Center for Peace Through Strength. Its mission: expand the Abraham Accords and fulfill the prophetic vision of a world where nations no longer lift up swords against one another. In his latest book, One Jewish State, The Last Best Hope to Resolve the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict, featuring a foreword by Mike Pompeo, Ambassador Freedman pushes back against a two-state solution and maintains the United States has a biblical duty to support Israel annexing Judea and Samaria, also known as the West Bank. He advocates a return to values and divine covenants that unite the Jewish people, offering a hopeful path forward for all who live in the Holy Land.
Well, Ambassador David Freedman is here with us now, and Ambassador, it's a real honor to have you.
It's my honor to be with you.
But when I hold your book, I know it's like I'm holding something really hot here. That this is a sea change in U.S. foreign policy, going all the way back to 1948 in terms of international policy, going all the way back to the British Mandate. Why have you come to the conclusion that this two-state solution is no longer viable?
Well, thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here. The two-state solution is it's been tried and failed. Is sort of the first answer. 18 years ago, Israel evacuated Gaza. Right? Hasn't been a Jew living there for 18 years. Hasn't been a soldier with boots on the ground there since just before, since after October 7th.
Why isn't that narrative part of the public consciousness? Because all of that happened in the Bush administration. It was this great push for democracy. If we give them freedom, they'll vote for democratic principles. It was all part of this sort of Arab Spring euphoria, and it obviously didn't work.
Well, they voted to elect Hamas, right? That's who they voted for. And it didn't stop the world from giving them money, so including America, much to my regret. All the administrations other than the Trump administration funded UNRWA, funded Hamas. They got lots of money from the Gulf, got lots of money from Europe. And these billions of dollars could have been used to build beautiful seafront properties like Tel Aviv has. Same beaches, Tel Aviv, right? But instead they built this massive network of terror tunnels and weapons of mass destruction. So that's case number one. They had a state. There were no Jews there, no Israeli presence there, and they used it just to create a platform to kill the Jewish people. On the other side of Israel, Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank as we call it, after Oslo, the Palestinians were given about half, 40% to govern themselves, Area A and B, places like Jenin and Ramallah and Nablus, and the same thing. I mean, they've created
Bethlehem.
And Bethlehem, yes, and which went from being 80% Christian to 80% Muslim, right? Under their rule.
And that's a narrative that isn't discussed either. I used to be able to go to Bethlehem. I've been told now, don't go, because you may not be able to come back. Yeah. We can't guarantee your safety there.
I was just there, and it's really a shell of what it was during its heyday. And the Palestinian Authority, which is supposed to be the better group compared to Hamas. I mean, they have a pension system, which I think you've reported on, where they incentivize terrorists to kill Jews. You kill one Jew, you get a pension. You kill two Jews, you get a double pension.
With our tax money.
With our tax money, right? Which, again, Trump signed the Taylor Force Act. It's now observed in the breach by the Biden administration. So we have no accountability. We've established no accountability within the Palestinian world, and we just can't make this mistake another time, because it will be national suicide for the Jewish people in the land of Israel.
Do you consider this whole concept of there shouldn't be a two-state solution, there should be a one-state solution with the Palestinians having resident status? Do you see that as, will anybody at the State Department go along with this?
Not the current State Department, no. Look, people say to me, well, who's going to agree to this? And my response is, I'm not sure I really care who agrees with it. I mean, Israel is in Judea and Samaria. They have military control of the area. If tomorrow, and I don't advocate this get done overnight, I mean, I think it's a trajectory. It will take a few years to do this. But if tomorrow Israel planted a flag and said, look, this is all sovereign Israel, the Palestinians would get up in the morning. They wouldn't really notice anything different. What that creates the opportunity to do over time is for Israel to do what it does well, which is to de-radicalize an Arab population. Remember, 20% of the Israeli citizens are Arab, right? 20%. And more than 20% of the elite universities in Israel are Arab students. You have a dear friend of mine is the former chairman of Bank Leumi, the largest bank in Israel. He's a Muslim Arab. Israel knows how to empower its Muslim minority, its Arab minority. And those values can be exported into Judea and Samaria in ways that no other potential sovereign could ever achieve. And so what I say about this one Jewish state, yes, it's a Jewish state, but in terms of creating the opportunity for human dignity, prosperity, security within these territories, within the West Bank or Judea and Samaria, it's a win-win for everybody. It's the only method that will de-radicalize this area. And if people just take a step back and say, do we care about a hypothetical, abstract principle that has never worked, or do we care about creating facts on the ground that make this area more dignified, more stable, more prosperous? This is the way to do it. And I would just say one thing, Gordon, Mike Pompeo said something which I thought was very profound in the forward, because this is obviously God's will as well. I mean, this is consistent with God's covenants to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. It's consistent with the prophecies of Jeremiah and Isaiah and Ezekiel. And what Mike says is, should we really be surprised that God's will actually achieves the best outcome for all the inhabitants of this land?
Yeah, that's a wonderful point. Have you talked to former President Trump about this?
Well, look, he knows this is out there. And I'll tell you the truth. If I said to President Trump tomorrow, would you be willing to recognize sovereignty over, Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria? The question he would ask me is, well, what does Israel want to do? I mean, he's not going to preempt Israel's decision, just like he wouldn't micromanage Israel's war against Hamas, which the current administration is doing. So he would say, what does Israel want to do? And I would tell him candidly, I don't know. I don't know right now. They're fighting an existential battle. It's hard for them to deal kind of in these long-term types of issues without first finishing up the existential issues. And he would say to me, look, when Israel's ready, let them come to me. Make the case for this. Make the case why this is good for Israel, why it's good for the region, why it's good for America. And I'll give it a fair hearing, and I think he will. And I think on the merits, this plan sells itself. But I think right now we're in a very very perilous time, and I don't think it's quite ready for prime time, if you will.
Well, I mean, just in recent history, right before the launch of the Abraham Accords, there was serious talk in the highest levels of Israeli government. Let's annex Judea, Samaria.
Yes.
Let's get rid of the fiction that the West Bank is some kind of occupied territory. It's ours, and let's take it. But the Abraham Accords put that.
Well, it suspended it for. By the way, the period of suspension ended on August 13th of this year. So whatever agreements were made are no longer applicable. Yeah, look, that was that was where we were. But there's a difference between that and where we are now. Because when I was sitting in the Oval Office with President Trump back in the middle of 2020, we were talking about this annexation. So he said to me, well, how much is Israel going to take? And I said, well, the plan is that they would take about half of Area C, which is about 30%, let's say, of Judea and Samaria. And he'd say, well, what about the rest? I said, well, given the Palestinian reaction, they'll probably end up with the rest of Area C, which would be about 60% of Judea and Samaria. Then he says, well, what are we left with? And so you're left with Area A and B, which are Palestinian. And he said, well, how's that going to work? I mean, you're going to basically create Gaza all over again. You're going to end up with a territory, a small, narrow territory. They're going to get boxed in. Israel's not going to be there. You're not going to be helping them. They're going to be on their own, landlocked. Aren't they just going to become radicalized? Aren't you going to have another Gaza? That was a very astute point by the president. And so I took that to heart. And when I wrote this book, I said, well, let's deal with that. Israel should just take the whole thing. Let Israel take the entire territory, right? I mean, Area A and B are also very significant biblical territory. Take the whole thing, begin to export the ability to empower the Arab population in this area, focus on the human dignity and the prosperity with permanent residency. These people will know they're never going to get thrown out of their land, and begin to live together. Tear down these walls, live together, but with Israeli sovereignty over everything. I think that answers the question that the president had posed to me back in 2020.
What would you think, if the vice president becomes President Harris? What will you think will happen with Israeli policy?
Well, just at the debate, she talked about how important it is to establish a Palestinian state. I don't understand how anybody watching the news today could think that, given the challenges Israel faces from its Palestinian population on either side, either on the Gaza side or the West Bank side, how creating a platform for these people who will undoubtedly at this point be taken over by Hamas, how this could be in the interests of Israel, the interests of the Palestinians themselves, Jordan, Egypt, the whole region. It'll explode. It
wouldn't be in the U.S. interest.
It would be antithetical to American interests, of course.
But she's just echoing, I mean, President Biden, in the very first week in office, calls for a two-state solution based on the 67 borders, which from an Israeli standpoint, no, you can't do that. Well, you can fire rockets right at us.
Well, the Israeli Knesset just recently, by an overwhelming majority that included people in the center and the left, rejected the idea of a two-state solution. But it is, Gordon, it is what people say. It's the mother's milk, if you will, of the Democratic Party. They've got themselves locked into this ever since, Bill Clinton, had his moment with Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat. And it is what they believe in. And Oslo has brought this region nothing but misery. This idea that you have one state, which is Jewish and Arab, and then you have a second state, which is the heart of biblical Israel, which is only Arab, which will destroy every single, semblance of Jewish life from the past, 3 millennia. I tell people, when you think about this, think about the video you're going to watch. You're going to watch a video, in due course, once the Palestinian state is established. You're going to watch a video where Palestinians are going to go to a place like Shiloh or Bethel, and they're going to be there with, with flames and bombs and pitchforks. They're going to destroy every single remnant, every single archaeological remnant of Jewish life going back to the times of Joshua. That's what they're going to destroy. You want to watch that video? Because it's going to me, it'll be, it'll bring me to tears. I mean, it'll be like, imagine what people watched when the temples were destroyed. But that's what you're going to see, as part of a two-state solution.
Well, I've got to give some credit to Hillary Clinton, that since October 7th, she's actually been very strong for Israel.
Yes.
And it was based on the experience that she had in the, being in the White House as those treaties were trying to be negotiated. And she said that there's no hope here. The Palestinian side is never going to accept Israel.
No, and that's what, when people say to me, well, the Palestinians won't accept your plan, I said, well, Israel's there already. I mean, it's not a question about accepting a plan. No one needs to ask the Palestinians to give up their dreams of statehood. I mean, if that's what they want to keep talking about and thinking about, but as the Palestinians see their lives beginning to improve, as they see roads being built, schools being built, hospitals being built, through Israel, exporting its values into this area, over time, things will just get better, and we don't need to have anybody sign any piece of paper. This does not require a treaty. This requires Israel, with the support of America, asserting its sovereignty and helping and getting some help from our Abraham Accord partners to help, rebuild, the West Bank in a way which brings prosperity and security.
And prosperity and security to the whole region.
To the whole region.
So instead of all of this turmoil and radicalization. I do have to point out an old foreign policy. It was from the Israeli UN ambassador. The Arabs have never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
Right.
Every time they've been given a state, regardless of the boundaries, whether it was 48 or 67 or, they've never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
And they would miss this opportunity as well if given a veto right, which is why let's just not give them a veto right. Let's just Israel move forward. This is Israeli territory. This is Israel's, biblical homeland, and as a matter of international law, as Mike Pompeo said when he was Secretary of State, the Jews have every right to live there, peacefully without being bombarded by terrorists. So it belongs to Israel. Let Israel just assert its sovereignty, treat the Arabs with dignity and with respect, and we move forward from there. I think it's a win-win for the entire region.
All right, Ambassador, thanks for being with us. The book is called One Jewish State, and if you, like me, have been frustrated about the situation in Israel, in the Middle East, I've got to say that this has been a conflict that goes all the way back to San Remo. So it's 104 years of this. And this is finally something that I think will be a solution that will actually work and work a long time. So I encourage you to read it. You can find it wherever books are sold. And Ambassador, again, thanks for being with us. And I've got to admire your courage. This took a lot of courage to sort of go against the State Department and the foreign policy establishment.
I'd rather be with God than with the State Department.
Amen.
What makes Israel so special? How has Israel overcome history's greatest challenges to not just survive, but thrive? CBN Films answers all of these questions in the new movie, The Genius of Israel. This movie explores Israel's journey through adversity, unity, and innovation. If you want to check out more, go to the link in the description to pre-order the film today.